that you don't think I'm being held hostage against my will. This is my dungeon. This is where the AC is. But let me just tilt back. So here I have a little photo studio, which is why I'm here. So I know it looks a little bit creepy and deranged, but I'm fine. It's not always this dark and under consideration. But yeah, so under consideration is me and my wife, Brian Gomez Palacio. We've been in business as under consideration since 2007. In 2009, we moved from Brooklyn, New York to Austin, Texas. And we had a lot of client work. All of a sudden, that client work disappeared along with the recession. We had the blog brand new for, at that point, it had been 3 years. And the blog had gotten pretty popular, it had a big following. And at some point where we had no clients, we had no prospects, we had no idea how to get clients because we had always just done it by word of mouth and referrals, and it was great. Just people emailed us, say like, I have money, here's the project, now go do your thing. It was like, great. But all of a sudden that disappeared, and we were like, how are we gonna make money moving forward? Because we don't know how to get clients. So an idea we had was that, what if we do a conference around the blog brand new, and just keep it focused on logo identity and branding the same way that the brand new blog is set up. We figured that could be interesting. So that was 2010. We had our first conference in New York. It was a one-day conference. 400 people came. They all loved it. We loved it. Speakers loved it. We're like, oh, cool. Like, and we actually made a profit. We're like, all right, this is interesting, and let's see what keeps happening. So over the next, from 2010 to 2013, we did a one-day conference, 3 of them in New York, 1 of them in San Francisco. In 2014, we thought, oh, let's try a 2-day conference and see how that goes. So that, we did it in Chicago. That helped us grow the conference a little bit from 400 to 500 people to all of a sudden we have 750 people. We're like, okay, cool. We survived a 2-day conference. And what we realized is that it takes the same effort to set up a 1-day conference as it is to do a 2-day conference, because the setup is there. And you just like leave it there overnight and they show up the next day and you don't have to do anything. So we're like, oh, this is great. And once we figured that out, we're like, all right, let's start. Now that we have figured out the sort of the logistical aspects of doing a conference, now let's pay more attention to the branding of the conference, because in the end, our audience, not only are they mostly graphic designers, most of them are logo identity and brand designers. So we've always from the beginning, we placed emphasis on the design, but in 2014, we realized that we need to kick things up a notch and make things a little bit more interesting. And in the last 1-day conference that we did in New York, we started experimenting with a little bit of manual assembly. And because we figured, hey, we can do something for 500 people, it's not that bad. And then we just continued that to the first 2-day conference, which was 750 people. And we're like, yeah, it's still doable. And then in 2015 in New York, we were expecting 1,000 people. And we're like, all right, I think we can still do some manual assembly for 1,000 people. We can make 1,000 of something. So that's where I'm going to start showing you some stuff. And this is the first time I'm using 2 separate accounts, 2 separate devices on Zoom. So we're going to switch from what you're seeing now to the little seamless photo studio. So I'm going to mute here. All right, so now I'm talking here. Yes, it's working, right? Give me a thumbs up. All right, perfect. All right. Well, the weird thing is that now I can see me. Okay, this is freaky. This is like Inception Zoom edition. All right.
And if everybody wants to go to speaker view, you'll be able to see it more up close. Just a hint.
So speaker view is better. All right. All right. Yeah, I think this is working now. I think, Terry, you might need to go into mute. Oh, you're muted. All right. I'll just move forward. If anything happens, just wave at me. All right. So this is the program for the 2015 brand new conference. And what we did this year was we wanted to include graffiti somehow in the identity, because New York is graffiti, you know, it's a little bit gritty, etc. But we also wanted to include, you know, this kind of like nicer font, which is it's called Obsidian, and the idea was to have this kind of like represent the duality of New York, that it's gritty and dirty and there's graffiti, but there's also you know, there's a certain opulence to living in New York, and it's expensive and whatnot. But so that's just the backstory to this. So what you're seeing here, these are 4 different covers, and at first glance you might be like, oh, that's just a black spot printing on 4 different color stocks with full gold foil on it. And that would be the sane way to do this. But what kind of like our goal is to, anything that would be sane, we go the opposite route. So what you're looking at here is these are, anything that's black has actually been spray painted by hand. So if you get, you know, when you get up close to it, you can see the difference in density of the spray paint hitting the paper, as well as like all that really nice like diffused aspect of spray painting, and it just wraps around the back, and at the same time, and then it has, on top of it, it has the gold foil. So we came up with 4 different designs, that 4 different stencils that we put, and I'll show you how we actually did it in, when I switch back to the other computer. But there's 4 different designs. There's 4 different color papers. This is Nina Astro Brights. We selected 4 of them. So the nice thing is that, you know, we could use this design on any of the 4 colors, this design on any of the 4 colors. So eventually the variety of covers was just a little bit too insane. But I think, and you know, the texture now has worn off a little bit, because it's been, what is it now, 5 years. But when we first made them, like if you rub your hands against this, you could feel the, you know, kind of like the texture of the spray paint. And, you know, if you smelled it up close enough, you could still smell the spray paint. And one of the reasons why it's this sort of awkward, long, skinny size was so that when we spray painted them, we could spray paint like a letter size sheet, and then that would allow us to have some cool graphics on the spine and the back cover. So aside from being a cool shape, you know, there was a functional aspect to it, in the sense that we could spray paint and then use that to bind. And one thing that you'll notice here, let me get that shine in there. Oh, look at that shine. So that is a gold edge inking on the spine. And this was bound and printed on the inside. The printing was done by Classic Color in Broadview, Illinois. And they've been our go-to printer for 5-6 years now. And we're working with Jeff Hernandez of Classic. Like, we showed them what we wanted to do, and then he was like, hey, you know, I think I can put gold edging on the pages. Would you like that? And I'm like, yes, please, we would like that very much. And it really took the project to a whole other level, because we had this gold tie in with the gold foil. So and I'll show you the inside, and then I'll move to the other computer. So on the inside, it's just a 4-color printing. This is done on also Nina, and I'm sure it says here, the body of the paper is Nina Asteroid Papers, Lift Off, oh, those are the cover, the body, Classic Crest, Avalanche 1. So yeah, on the inside is just gold spot color, and then lots of 4-color printing on the inside. We put in some of those spray paint textures in there. We also spray painted all the names of all the company names, etc. So it just goes on and on. We show all the speakers, as well as in the back. We also include for our sponsors, they get kind of like nice little editorial spreads in the back, etc. So that's what those look. So this way you can get a sense for the dimensions. So now I'm going to switch back to the other computer and show you a couple of videos of how we made this happen. All right, so now I'm here, and I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to hit play. Are we good? Perfect. All right, let me just do one more thing. I think I have to set up my video. All right, never mind. All right. Sorry. All right, yeah, so here's the setup that we had to create the covers. So what you're looking at is that we have four different, let me just back up to make sure that plays again. All right, so just, those are the stencils. We're in the, this is when we were in Austin, Texas, and 90-degree heat at least. We're wearing masks, which now would come really handy. After we were done with that project, we threw them away just because they were so horrible to wear in the heat because your face would get all sweaty. So that was part of our setup. And then this is another view. So you can see that there's no real shortcut here. We just have to go in, put in one page at a time, and we created these stations where you could lift the stencils and just put in and take out the sheets of paper somewhat easily. And then this is the final shot that you can in here you can sort of see the texture of the spray paint when it was a little bit more fresh. Like you can see the granulated aspect of the spray paint. And that's just some variety of the different designs on the different color papers and how it looks like when it's photographed pretty kind of like nicely and how it looks stacked. So there was a lot of variety to that. So I've shown you that. I'm going to move on to the next year. Let me escape here, stop share, mute. Now we're back here. I'm just creating some movement so that Zoom switches over here. So I'm going to move this over to the side. And then the next thing I'm going to show you is not necessarily print. These are the badges for, and I'll show you the printed programs as well, but these are the badges for the 2016 brand new conference in Nashville. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to bring in the music aspect of the country music aspect of Nashville into the identity somehow. And one of the things that's pretty cool about country music is that some of the singers used to, they would wear these really ornate suits with floral patterns and birds and whatnot, and then rhinestones on them. So that's what informs sort of this illustration. So we made some of our own. This one has butterflies and little leaves. This one has little birdies and more leaves. But anyway, that's not the point of this. I'll show you better explanations of those. But what these are, let me see if you can hear here. So these are actual record, like vinyl records that we cut them into little rectangles, and they're still screened with 4 different inks. So we like to mix and match, as you can see. So there's, again, Astro Brights. It's just hard to resist that those colorful papers. And so we could mix and match kind of like the place where we have the name. This is pink, orange, and green. This is green, pink, and blue, green, and orange, and so forth. But again, let me see if I can get some of that texture in there. Let's see if you can, yeah, there you go. So you can see the texture of the vinyl records there, which is something that you just don't get from regular plastic lanyard. So I'll show you a little video of that in a little bit, but while we're here on this camera, I'll show you the programs. And that better shows how we did the illustration. So each letter had kind of like a really nice ornate illustration. So there's B, N, C for brand new conference. And usually what we do, we short, like our Instagram handle is BNConf. Let me get that better into frame. There you go. All right. So each letter has its own design, and this is now printed in Sappi McCoy, which is why you get that. Look at that color. Like it's just it makes your screen vibrate. And then one thing that you'll notice maybe here, let me see if you can look at that. Yeah, so this is a little rhinestone This is a little rhinestone too. So each letter, each program had 7 rhinestones. Why 7? Because we figured that was a nice enough number without going overboard, without killing ourselves. And they're not real rhinestones, they're cheap plastic things, but you can see them glimmer when the light hits them a certain way. And then this one's on the inside. So again, like different illustrations for each one. And then on the inside, just really nice, just with McCoy, just like the blacks are so, like, look at that black, so nice. And then on this one, Jeff at Classic was like, let me give you some spot gloss varnish on certain areas. So this is spot gloss varnish, same here. And like even in the speaker pages, like you can see, like this will have a spot gloss, this one too, this one too. So it created a nice little dynamic even within each layout. Yeah, just like inside, just the good old-fashioned 4-color printing, which Classic is so good at. I know that we don't even have to go to the press checks because we know they're just gonna nail the color. And look at like those bright colors, just, and those are not spot, that's just CMYK bills. They just really amazing. Anyway, so those are those. And then on the back, they all have the full pattern of each letter. All right, let me just switch all of them. Yeah, so like even on the back, they're pretty nice. All right, I'm gonna switch back to the other computer. Here, we're gonna share again, share. And on this one, I'll show you the process of how we did the badges. So kind of like the first question was, can we silk screen on vinyl? And working with industry print shop in Austin, Texas, who we used to print a lot of stuff with them, they were like, yeah, let's give it a try. And the trick was that they had to use an ink that has not been in use by most silk screen printers because it's really toxic, because it was the only one that was sticky enough to adhere to plastic. So they had to do the printing in a really, in an open space, not in an open space, but they had a big floor upstairs that they opened all the windows, all the doors, because it was so, the fumes were pretty toxic from this ink that it used to be the norm in silk screen printing maybe 40 years ago, but then someone realized, oh, people are dying from using this ink, let's not use it anymore. But so they made an exception for us in this case. And the ink was so intense that they had mixed this, the green, they had mixed it the night before. And when the printer came in the day after, it had destroyed the plastic container that it was in. You're like, yeah, it just ate through the plastic. So, that's what we're working with, but it looks great and no one died, so we're fine. So they printed on them. Yeah, so it's kind of like funny to see records on a drying rack. And then to cut them, this was the really hard part, how to separate each piece from the record. And here you would think like, oh, they're just cutting through them, but basically what we're doing is just scoring them, and then we would need to snap them. Like that was the only way to get a clean cut without really having to cut through them, which was impossible anyway. And they all the albums were different thicknesses, so you never knew if it was going to require 3 cuts or 100. So we figured that this was the best way to snap them. And then once we had that, we had to drill a little hole for each of them so that we could make it possible to hang a lanyard in there. And what you can't see on this video, I'll just play one more time, is that I'm drilling and my wife is putting in the little badges in place. She's not even looking to make sure that I do not drill through her fingers. That's how much she trusts me. I don't know why, God bless her, but she's just not even looking, and we just banged out like 1,200 of these ones, and she's not even looking, and I'm just drilling. So, instead of going to couples therapy, this is what we do. This is how we gain each other's trust. And then again, like this is, it just looks nice. I mean, it looks nice photographed, but when you're wearing them and when you receive them at the conference and you're like, what in the world is this? like, oh, like it's an actual record. And that's what we strive for a lot in trying to, you know, if you're going through the trouble of going to a conference somewhere other than when you live, when you get there, we want the experience of the materials to be significant, to be interesting and memorable in a way. So we're always looking for things to, for ways to bring some tactility into the materials. And again, like when you look at it, with a nice macro lens, you can really get a taste of the grooves of the records. And that's what the programs look like. The little rhinestones, like on that photo, you can see like, this were like, a penny a piece at most for each of those rhinestones, nothing fancy. But when you touch the cover, like, what is this bump? Oh, like it's a rhinestone. Cool. All right. Don't play. Stop. All right. Now I'm gonna stop sharing this one. Stop. All right, so now let me clean up my mess here so I can bring up the next guest on the table. All right, I should have an assistant here cleaning up all my mess. Hold on. All right, so next up, this is probably one of our favorite things that we've done so far, and I think one of the things that most people have loved so far. In 2018, we went back to New York. And we're like, right, we've done New York 4 times. What can we do next to make it interesting? And at first we're like, at first we were like, oh, we want to use concrete. We had it in our mind that somehow we're going to use concrete, and then we're like, how do we tie it back into New York? Oh, New York is a concrete jungle. Like, boom, there's a concept, easy sell, and any excuse to use concrete is cool. So now we have a good excuse to use concrete. And what we did is that, so let me just show you that. So this is a whole slab of concrete that has been glued to the program. We made some molds with letter, the being conf in there that ends up being debossed on the cover. And then let me see if we can see. So what we love the most was like all these little dotty, all those dots, they're all pockets of air. And then like, especially here on the side, let me see if I can get one here in the shot. Yeah, there we go. So like those things, like those were just like super nice, like a really nice surprise that we didn't expect. And what was really cool about this too is that all the covers ended up different. They're all different shades of gray. So like you can see, that one is super light, this one is really dark. And at first you're like, oh my God, they're not all the same. So instead of trying to make everything the same, we're just like, oh, let's just take advantage that we're naturally getting all this variety of shades of gray. I don't know if there's 50 shades of gray, that would be awesome. But there's plenty of shades of gray in there. And I get also the other thing is that sometimes like little pieces of the B broke, or sometimes this lettering, this typography here would not show up perfectly. We're like, fine, let's just embrace the what's it called, wabi sabi nature. I think that embrace the imperfections. So when you look at it, like it's just really convincing that it's there. It's just placed there. And like, so this is all like black ink on the front cover and back cover. But on the front cover, what we did is so that we just printed a little border so that it would look like it's all black, but we didn't want to waste all that ink that you wouldn't get to see anyway. And what this does is that it just gives it an insane, a really great weight to the program, and then just sort of lands nicely on your hand. And yep, on the inside is just once more classic color with really insane good CMYK printing on Sappy McCoy, and it just prints so well, and the grays are all nice and even. Even though Jeff at Classic was like, oh no, the grays are going to be hard, they're going to be banded, or well, they had the possibility of getting banded. And I was like, no, Jeff, you can do it. I know Classic can do it, and they did it, and everything looks pretty nice and slick. And no, Classic does not pay me to be this nice to them in public. They just are. They're just so good. Anyway, so there's that. And then I'm going to show you how that got done. All right. Unmute. Share. I'm getting good at this. All right. Play. So what you'll see is sort of the finished process that we came up with, but it took a while to figure out the kind of like the consistency of the concrete, the amount of time it needed to dry, things like that, what kind of molds to use. We went through, a dozen different materials to create the molds. But in the end, this is what we had, we came up with, and there's like 12. Those first ones that you're seeing, those are the molds for the covers. And so we had 12 of them, and then we only had a few for the badges, and also for some cute little cubes that we made. So we could only do a certain amount of products at a time. So each day we could only do like, 0.5% of the amount that we needed. And it took us like 4 or 5 months to do the full run of, I think we ended up doing 1,100 of them. And these are the little cubes. And then this is gluing the things on the other things. So this is gluing the concrete on the different elements. So these are the name badges, and what the ink that we found worked the best. Not the ink, the glue that we found worked the best was tile glue. And again, I think we tried like 12 different types of glue. And in the end, that was the one that held the best, and also the one that didn't eat the paper, or the one that showed through on the other side of the paper, which was a lot of other glues would just wrinkle the paper, and that just looked horrible. And that's been another cool thing about working with Sappi and the McCoy paper. It's just like it can take anything. Like we put all kinds of glue on it, and it'll be like fine, like just get on with it, and we can handle it. And so it's been a really nice paper to work with that can handle a surprising amount of weird things. And kind of like the nice photos, you get those differences of grays, different textures. And it looks great online. It's just like, you look at it like, that's not real. Like, this is a 3D computer rendering. Like, nope, we actually made them. And again, like those bubbles, like we just love those bubbles and how they really created this amazing imperfections. And those are the name badges. And, they seem heavy, but they were not that heavy because the black part is, what's it called? It's a foamy thing that you can buy at Hobby Lobby. And it's cool, like it has a silly name like Puffy McStuffing. I don't know. I know that's a Disney show, but so that balanced the weight of the concrete, and it was a pretty nice black too. I can just you can see like the end, like it broke. And normally, like if this were a print job, we would send it back. Like, no, 1 of 1,000 is broken. Send it back. Like, no, this looks great. And those are the little cubes that we made. So we made 1,000 of these things just to give away. We put it in the little in the goodie bag, and that did make the goodie bag weigh a little bit more than usual. And they're not that big. They're like, should we have one in here? No, I should have brought one in, but they're like this size. All right, so that's the next to last. All right, we're gonna stop share. Oh, escape. Stop share. Unmute.
This is amazing stuff, Armin.
I have to go one by one because they are. Oh, and the other thing about this one is that because they were so breakable, we're like, we're not going to ship them UPS because they're just going to make confetti out of this one. So we we ended up renting 2 minivans to load up. In total, with the paper and all the concrete, it ended up being 2 tons, literally. Like, it's not an exaggeration. We weighed, we did the math. So we had to rent 2 cars so that we could split the contents into 2 cars, because otherwise we would not be able to drive on the highway. So fun times. All right, last one. All right, so this is for last year in the conference in Las Vegas. And one of the things that we wanted to capture from Las Vegas was the neon signs and how they flicker on and off, and kind of like that, that sense of, oh my God, there's so much stimulus, I'm gonna pass out. So what we ended up arriving at was lenticular printing. So let me see if we can capture this. It might be hard to tell on the video, but this is lenticular printing on the cover. We have there are different stickers. So what these are so again, B and Conf for brand new conference. And what we did is that we die cut the letters out of each frame, and there's like 12 different images. So what we could do was mix and match. So this, the inside of this one might be somewhere else here, and the inside of this one might be somewhere else. So we could mix and match a bunch of different letters, and you end up with literally an infinite amount of combinations. So I know these ones are not showcasing as well here, but eventually I'll show you some videos. But again, like, this is just the idea. And let's see, I'll be quiet so you can hear this lovely sound. Wait. Yeah, that's what it's about. So that was, again, another bonus of the tactility of the lenticular printing, because that's how it works. It has a lot of tiny little lines that when you scratch them, they make that funny noise. And then this one's, what we did was they were done with adhesive backing behind it, so we could just peel and stick. And I'll show you a video of how that happens. On the inside, not to repeat myself, but you know what I'm going to say. Beautiful 4-color printing from Classic on Sappy McCoy. So yeah, so that has been a relationship that has just, I mean, at least for us, has worked beautifully, because we get beautiful printing, beautiful paper. So hope, and I think for them, they get a lovely projects a lovely project to showcase what they do. So I think it works for everyone involved. Anyway, so there's that. And then I'm going to show you how that came to be. So over here, share, play. All right, so here, this is, as you can see here, these are all the different, in the big containers, you can see the outer shapes of the letters, and in the little cups, those are all the insides of the letters. No, I lie. The cups, those are the counter spaces for the B and the O, because they end up floating. We didn't make a stencil, which would have been the easy way out. But as I've mentioned, we'd like to take the hard way out. So these are all the backs of the different letters. Those are all the insides, all arranged in different, so in here you'll see in the, each column is one of the designs, B, M, C, O, and F, and there's like 12 different designs going across. So that's our setup to start working on them. So the first step is just to start making, selecting the backs, which are, not the backs, but the outer frames of each letter. So basically right now we're just selecting them to make sure that we get a mix of the different photos. And then you do, and we did a bunch of times over. And then the second step is to start sticking those to the cover. So in the beginning, we used to measure each one by hand, and by the end, we were just eyeballing it, because one, it was faster, and it just became like a muscle reflex where we knew what had to go where. And then after that, it was selecting, the different insides for all the letters, and then not sticking them yet, just putting them in place so that then they would go on to the next station and be, the peel taken off and stuck on the cover. And there's that part. And at this point, I know, like, all the videos show my wife. And you're like, what do you do? Like, shoot the videos? Like, no, we have a tripod for that. But no, I do my share. Don't worry. But yeah, she's the faster one when it comes to this thing. So the videos look better when she does it. I mean, we speed them up, but even then, she's pretty fast. So those are the multiple combinations that we could have. And our oldest daughter, who's really smart, she figured out the amount of possible combinations, which is like 221 billion possible combinations. We didn't do that many, but it was nice to know that it was that many possible combinations. And then that's here you can get a better sense of the effect of the lenticular printing. And what was nice about this is that even if you didn't notice it at first, the moment that you opened the program, you'd be like, oh wait, did that just move? And because it worked, lenticular only works in one direction, like either left to right or up and down. And some nice photos. Little close-up of the texture, and those were the badges. So the badges also had lenticular, but it was a slightly different layout in the sense that it was like a little Russian doll nesting of little frames around it. So it's just more. We just want to get again that sense of the lights of Las Vegas around your neck for some reason. We just thought that would be cool. And the way we got the lenticular is that we actually I went to Las Vegas and got the biggest lens that I could get, so I could get really up close to the signs. And then I just would do like shutter, like quick shutter, like whatever it's called, like a bunch of shots in a really short period of time. So that way I could capture like the on and off states of the actual lights, and then it was a matter of pairing the best two images possible. And then that's what that looks like, the badges. And yeah, so that's it. That's all the products and videos I have to share. So I'll stop sharing. And yes, I think if we have time for Q&A, I think we can do that. Whatever you, Terry and Jill, want me to do.
Armin, that's absolutely amazing. I think we are all, my mouth has just been open the entire time. So cool. I'm seriously speechless. So we've got a ton of comments here in the chat box, but we'll go through them. If you guys have questions and want to take yourself off mute and ask, feel free to. Terry, do you want to?
Yeah, okay. I can go through a couple of them. So the very first question we had was, when is the date for the Austin conference?
Okay, yeah. So it was going to be October 22 and 23 of this year, but that is not going to happen. So we have postponed it to October 7 and 8 of 2021, and it's going to be in Austin, Texas. If all goes to plan, who knows? But even at this point, we're just at the mercy of the stuff around us. So fingers crossed, it will be there.
And another question about the conference was, is this good for print production people or just marketing and design folks?
In principle, I mean, it's I would not sell it. I wouldn't do a hard sell for print and for print designers, because we talk mostly about low identity and branding. Some speakers will show print projects, but it's really not the focus.
Gotcha. And then a couple people asked where you got all the vinyl records from.
We're still in Austin, and there's a huge, people have a lot of vinyl records there, and I think we bought 250 from just one guy, and then he just had them in bins, so like, yeah, come and get them. And then the others, like the rest, came from a couple of used record stores, and we just went through the $1 bin, and we just, I think we spent as much on the first 250 as we did on the last, we ended up doing 400 of them. So yeah, I think if we had come up with that idea here in Bloomington, we wouldn't have been able to pull it off. But in Austin, just like everybody has vinyl records hanging out, just there in their basements and stuff. Yeah.
So, and then Ringo had a question. He said, "This is crazy cool, but for the rest of us, how do you budget or present these ideas to clients?"
The budget-wise, they're not that expensive to produce. I mean, the real expensive part is the hourly labor. Like if we were, the biggest hurdle is the amount of time it takes. So if we were billing hourly, like even we don't even like to keep hours because it would scare us how much time we spend on this. So that is the most expensive part if this were to be billed as a project for a client. But for the most part, most of the solutions that we do, we try to keep them very much on budget because it's our money. So we try to, it's not that we're trying to save money or cut corners, but we're trying to make it the most feasible possible for us. So I think it's also a matter of quantity, and not everything has to be as crazy as this. There's a lot of things that you can do manually that will take a quarter of the time, that will add that extra touch to a print project. So yes, I think in the end it comes down to the same way that you assign value to print. Like it's always a hard sell to sell a client on print. Like, why should I do this when I can put an ad on Instagram? Like, well, because you want people to hold something, to take it back to their home, to experience it in a different way. And so you're selling, I think it's in the end, you're trying to sell the value of the experience. And there's no easy answer. I think it's just transferring your excitement onto the client, and then hopefully that works out.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions? You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask. I'm blown away. Like, I want everything. I want a piece of clothing that's been embossed.
Armin, one thing I'm noticing is you refer to your relationship with your printer. Like you don't even have to go on press checks, like that level of trust. How important is that? Can you speak to that process a little bit? Like how did you get to that place? I think as we come out of COVID, press checks as they had been are probably not gonna be, at least in the near future, the way that they once were. Do you have any advice for designers how to maybe navigate that, and how you built that relationship with Jeff and Classic Color to get you to that place?
Yeah, I think, with Classic in particular, I used to live in Chicago for a while, so I was aware of them from samples that we would receive either in the mail or from paper reps at the time, which, back then, they were this is the early 2000s. And so, like, I knew the quality, and then when Jeff approached us he approached us and like, hey, would you be interested in us being a sponsor by doing in-kind printing? And I was like, yes, please. Like, this is a dream come true, because like I knew that on our own we wouldn't be able to afford it, just because, and that sort of speaks to the quality, that not because it's expensive, it's good quality, but it just sets the bar for what to expect. So even from the first project, we never went on press, and we just trusted that their samples that we had seen before would be reflective of their quality control, and that was the case. But yeah, with pretty much any other printer, I've always gone on press. In general, I don't trust other people, which it's horrible. But it's also good because then you can figure out your own what your quality standards are. But again, it can just be detrimental to your well-being mentally. But anyway, I think with other printers that I have less trust or that we're using for the first time, I'll go to for press check just because that's what makes sense. And then if I get a good feeling from that first experience, then I can be like, all right, you go do you. when it comes to printing, and it also varies on the job. Like for color printing, I think it can be screwed up, I guess, but for the most part, it's fairly easy. Like whenever there's specialty processes, whether it's foil stamping or embossing or whatever, you do want to be there in the first go around just to make sure that that's getting done. And I don't think it's so much getting done right. I think it's more about your own peace of mind that what you paid to have done is getting done the way that you envisioned it in your mind, which is really, because it's amazing how you have something in your mind, you go through proofs, you go through comps, but then when the real thing is made, you're like, wait, what? Like this is more silver, this is less silver, this is more red. So a lot of things happen on press that you just can't expect. So now I'm rambling. So I think in the end, it comes down to just how you feel about the person that you're working with. There are some printers that you're like, from the moment that you get on the phone with them or an email with them, you're like, this is going to get screwed up at some point in the process. I need to be on them at all times. I'm not trying to be mean. It's just like, that's been my experience over 20 years, that sometimes you just get a feeling like, they're either going to cut it wrong, they're going to use the wrong PMS, whatever it is, something's going to go wrong. So, that's why I think that's why you have to sign off on everything every step of the way, so that they, they're not liable for anything that happens after that, but just for safety checks along the way. So yeah, it's fine to not trust your printers, I think, because then that way you can ensure a good quality product. But in our case, we just trust Jeff and Classic to deliver a great product no matter what.
That's awesome. So Chris is asking a couple questions here. Is it just you and your wife assembling things every year?
Oh, I thought it was a follow-up question. No, yes. Okay. It is just me and Bryony over the years. Every year we think like, oh, let's get some help in here because it gets crazy. And what we've tried that a couple of times, and what we found is that no one is as fast as we are, and no one has we do have, as corny as it may sound, we have like an unspoken language, me and Bryony, that we know. Like I can just say like I can just grunt and she'll know what I mean. Like she'll know that something went wrong or that the process needs to be stopped or something. And because it's our own conference, like we're in it 100%. And we've had other designers be like, I would love to help, and we bring them in to help, and they chat and they're telling us about their day. And we're like, no, like you're here to get stuff done. Like this is an assembly line. I mean, it's no different from Henry Ford coming up with how to do cars in the turn of the century. Like this is what we're doing here. Like this is the real deal. So yeah, we found that we're faster on our own than when we have help. And that's not to be mean to anyone. It's just like this is like a really specific ability it's an ability to have endurance to do something over and over that just a lot of people don't have and don't enjoy. Like we sort of enjoy the masochism of it. I don't know why. It's just like we don't get any pleasure off of it. But we enjoy it. We enjoy the repeating of a mechanism that yields something interesting.
Well, and I think that shows in the final results, that the fact that you can do that type of quantity and they're all so beautifully done, and that level of detail is just unbelievable. So the one that went along with that was, and I'm seeing it repeated here, is how far out are you guys concepting this? Each conference collateral, the materials for it.
Yep, for the most part, like for example, the concrete one, we were coming back from the 2017 conference in Chicago. We drove from Bloomington to there, and on the way back, Bryony just went like, let's use concrete next year. And so that was literally the day after the conference. And from there, we just started planning. So sometimes it can be a full year. At the very least, it has to be, 9 months. For the Nashville conference, we we had gone one direction with the lanyards, and we spent a good 3 months trying to prototype something. It was all about embroidery, and we just could not master the tools. So I think 3 months before the conference, we're like, we need to switch gears. And so that's when we did the vinyl record. So that was, you know, that one we had to accelerate just because we're against the ropes. But yeah, ideally it's 9 months at least.
That's amazing. Patty Grow, are you still with us on the call? If so, hey, I wanted to ask you if you would tell our Meetup members the treat that Sappy is kind of giving us today.
Oh, well, thank you. Hi, Armin. So after every conference, I always ask Armin if he has any leftovers of the programs because they're so amazing. And I have to also say they have the best goodie bags of all the conferences that I go to. Everything is just so well thought out. And so I've gotten a little stash left over from Armin and Bryony over the years. And so I sent Jill a couple of them because I don't have them in large quantities, but I sent her a couple of the concrete books from New York, the lenticular from Las Vegas, and the Nashville programs as a giveaway. So I do have more of the Nashville ones. So we have a larger quantity of that if any of your clients want those, but we are very limited, and I had to take a deep breath before I gave them away because I treasure them. But I think this is such a good audience and I'm sure people will really appreciate them. So.
Thank you, Patty. So what we're going to do is, you guys have signed up, so we know who you are. We're going to do a random drawing of, I believe we have 9 of them that we can give away that we have at Millcraft that Patty has sent to us. So we're going to share the winners. We're going to do this afterwards, share the winners with you tomorrow when we share the recording with everybody. And then I would tell you, reach out to your Millcraft rep if you have more specific questions, and maybe perhaps we can take those up on a case-by-case basis with Patty and the team at Sappy. And then I'm just seeing, people are definitely geared up about that. And then I know, Armin, I don't know if you realize that Jeff Hernandez is on the Meetup with us today. And Jeff, if you're still here, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about the process and working with Armin. If you're around and you want to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, working with Armin, I'm very blessed. I get to work with a lot of great creatives throughout the United States. But working with Armin is, wow. I mean, wow. Every time he picks the phone up and he calls me, it's like, what is he going to dream up next? And between Bryony and Armin, they are probably the most organized. I mean, when they hand something over to you, it's blueprinted. I mean, they give it to you. There's really no need for them to come out, as he said earlier. And because structurally, they do a lot of experimentation. A lot of these pieces you look at and you say, wow, this is cool, but you really don't know that maybe 6 months to a year of preparation went into this thought process. They start something and they never say, we can't do this. If it doesn't work one way, they try it another way and another way and another way. And they're probably one of the most engaging groups to work with, because not only did the two work together so well, but everybody behind them works so great. I mean, I've never seen such an accommodating group to work with, because putting this together is a lot of fun, because it's something you look forward to. And most people say, well, gee, I don't want to look forward to something this complex. With them, it's very extremely buttoned up. Their creativity is, I know there's other designers that I do work with, but I could say this because they know I'm a very straight person and truthful of what I say. They are second to none. I mean, when they put something together. And they definitely, I've never heard somebody leave a show that doesn't say this is one of the greatest shows I've ever attended, because it's so impactful, it's so real, it's just unplugged.
That's awesome. And I have to say, I agree. Just in the collateral that I've seen, I don't know how you cannot hold that in your hand and feel like, oh my God, like not only did I get to attend like this amazing conference, but you have the actual physical keepsakes. And I think that's why we print. And then to have something that's so well done, like everybody, the chat section, I mean, Armin, it's crazy if you haven't had a chance to scroll through it, like in love with, and I'm sure you hear this everywhere, with everything. And that to me is the power of print, beautiful production. But again, that the entire relationship, I mean, Armin doesn't, I'm sure doesn't give you a, you know, a half-baked cake. Like it's the recipe, it's all the ingredients you need, it's ready to go. And I think that that's really the power of the relationship and what we do when we talk about design and print and how it works really well together. So I'm so happy you were able to share your process in working with Armin on the collateral, and really the pieces are beautifully done. We're excited to give them away. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions before we're right at the 2 o'clock mark. So if so, I'll let you come off mute. But if not, I wanted to thank everybody. This meetup marks the last of our weekly meetups. However, we love the platform. We think you guys love the platform too, and we're going to keep this going. So we're going to take a break for the next week or so, but we promise we're coming back in June with a really, really good one. And we're going to keep doing this as long as you guys are enjoying it and keep showing up. So thank you so much, everybody. Armin, thank you so much. This was wonderful. You've made all of us print and paper nerds very, very happy and definitely inspired us. I cannot wait to go through all of these in detail. So thank you guys. Really, it's just been so much fun to spend an hour every Thursday with you. It's made this time during a very uncertain time a lot easier. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Armin.
Thank you, Armin.